Hi, I'm Steinheimer. I'm here for another episode of Meet the Gaffer. Today we're going to look at the Arri 360 Skypanel, the latest in a long line of Skypanels now from Arri, LED, color variable, RGB, and big. It is definitely the biggest Skypanel by far, and quite heavy at that. And the best thing about the light, of course, is there's a lot of foot candles. Take out my my brand new used Spectra that I recently had to replace, and straight to the light I'm getting 205 foot candles, and that's through a very heavy diffusion. On occasion we'll do what we call a double break, where we put another layer of 4x diffusion in between the 8x and the light. But at 205 foot candles, that's probably more than you're going to need for almost any interview, unless you're up against a window. It's an expensive light. Here in the Bay Area, it's renting for $850, which is not much less than, say, an M90, which is, $950. Probably the chief benefit of this light is that it's super bright, but I can still plug it into an ordinary extension cord and plug it into a wall outlet in virtually any house or building. So no need for a generator or tie-in, super bright light, and color variability, probably the biggest selling points. So this is a situation where I put the diffusion back maybe a little bit further than I typically do for a lot of interview situations. I think I measured it out at approximately 6 feet here from the diffusion to me. And here's another thing that I'm also using a lot with the Skypanels more and more. Sometimes when we have multiple heads, we'll have them hooked up to a Centena system where we basically have a small dimmer and we're controlling the heads. But I also find that a lot of times I only have 1 or 2 Skypanels on the shoot. At that point, having the Arri remote box gives me control over dimming, color. There's 2800, and it drops it down so that I don't have to get on a ladder to try and read the dial. When I'm doing an interview thing like this, I will put this by camera. The DP can literally lean over and just tweak the last little bit, whether it needs to be brighter or not, or the color or whatever it is. I find DPs are pretty responsive to that. And then the other thing that I've used this light, at least on one occasion for, is the effects library. We used party colors. I'll show you that here in a few minutes. It was great for, it was sort of a music video light for a corporate thing. We basically put the light on the floor, shined it up to the ceiling, put it on party mode, and then we just rolled a doorway dolly back and forth with talent, doing a little rap kind of thing. Pretty much a perfect use for this kind of thing. We never could have, in years past, I would have taken an array of par cans and 8 circuits and different colored gels and heat, and just to be able to basically bring one light in, lay it on the floor, well, not quite on the floor, apple boxes, and put it on party mode was, salvation, really. All right, let's take a look at some of the accessories. The very first one, the cases that hold these lights are just darn immense. I've got one case, but I also went ahead and I made a cart for the light. So as you can see, pretty darn big. These heads are pretty darn big, and then there's still a ballast and cables. Here's one of the accessories that I ended up getting, is a DOP snap grid, just like for the smaller ones. Considerably more expensive in this larger size. And then here we have, let's see if we can get this out. Here's the Intensifier. So apparently Arri wanted to save a little bit of money, and what they did was they took the 120 Skypanel Intensifier and they basically tripled it with a little holder in between. I guess the manufacturing cost of this must have been enormous, and they decided to just go simple. So, and this thing's darn expensive too. But I have to say, I do use the Intensifier probably maybe every 6 Skypanel shoot. I just need a little bit more out of the light. It narrows the beam. but it gives you approximately 40% more light. A lot of times that makes the difference. Let's take a look at the actual light. So as you can see, it's darn big. 90 pounds just for the head. The ballast is another 24 pounds. I would say the only thing I don't like about this light is the new power cable, some kind of 2-pin thing with a connector that I've never seen anywhere else. Hard to find the keyway, and as far as I can tell, non-existent in the rest of the world. So if it ever goes bad, good luck with that. You know, you need to carry a spare around. Probably the weakest element to this whole light. Everyone goes on and on about the carbon fiber bail. Hey, it looks spiffy. You know, if you were going to try and save weight, I'd try and save it here if you could, but I don't know. I'm sure Arri made every effort to make this thing as light as possible. At 90 pounds, it's pretty darn heavy. It's really a two-man exercise. I don't think I could even get it off of this stand if I wanted to by myself. So the other expense, I had to go out and buy a new Roadrunner, the low version of it, because for interiors, you need a crank stand for this thing. It's so darn heavy. I wouldn't probably put it on a regular junior stand, at least not without Cardellini's around the columns. And to be able to crank up and down is pretty useful. The mini Vader might work in some situations. I was in a house where I couldn't get the mini Vader. I couldn't get this light to be on a Matthews mini Vader and still be below the ceiling height. So for interiors, I like this stand. It's got a little smaller footprint, seems to be able to get high enough. And I've got a 2-foot steel riser that I use in here when I'm desperate to just get it up a little bit higher for an interior, say you have a high ceiling or something like that. Okay, the only other thing I don't like about this light is when you hook up the remote or when you put it on the Centena system, you lose all the information here. So whereas on a Kinefo Select, you'll still see the color temperature readout. Here, you lose all that information, and so dialing in the exact color temperature with a 0 to 100% fader on a dimmer is actually somewhat difficult. So, Arri, maybe you can work on that. So another thing, the S360 is longer. It's 50 inches compared to the Skypanel S60. That's 25 inches. The S120, which is basically 1/3 of this light, is also 50 inches wide. I really like that for wrap when you're doing interviews. I find this is roughly comparable to a book light. But the thing that I like better about this than a book light is a book light, you end up with a lot of grip gack behind the scenes. You basically have this bounce surface that's hard to move. If you want to do some subtle adjustments, you got a lot of stands and white and so on to move. And what I do on this with this light and the 120 is I put up an 8x diffusion. I put the stand at the other end, so if my director's sitting here and the camera's approximately here, then I can dress this back if I have to. It's got a little bit of flexibility. People can pass in and out in a sort of crowded room situation. And then whether it's this light or the S120, I put it on wheels. Of course, this light is so big, it does need a beefy crank stand. But then I can slide it back and forth to adjust the amount of wrap on a face. And I find that the sort of trend right now, at least around the Silicon Valley, is very little fill, a lot of times negative fill. So the amount of wrap you have on a face for an interview is actually fairly crucial. You want to find just the right amount for each particular person. And having this adjustability where it's basically sliding back and forth behind a larger piece of diffusion, to me, works out really well. All right, let's look at one of the more fun aspects of this light. In fact, all the Skypanels basically have a library of effects colors. So we go down to lighting effects, and it's off right now. I go down to party effect. Here's party. And they have candle, which seems to be a variation of up and down. You can control the speed on the warmer color thing. Clouds passing, definitely on the bluer side. Then my favorite, club lights. And this is actually the one, you can control the speed, so that's 50%. Here's 100%. And this is actually, I think we ran it at about 60 60% for the faux music video. Anyway, it's bright. And then my other favorite, they have a color chase. I've never even seen that one. Go to my favorite cop car, which I find fairly hilarious that the Germans actually managed to get the nomenclature, American shorthand for a police car labeled as cop car, probably because they had limited little space to put the words in here. Anyway, separates the light into one red half and one blue half. That's a little fast. Although actually that's probably realistically, oh, it says quad, you can actually change it. Huh. So we take a look at it. Now it's just divided in half. A blue half and a red half. And you can change the speed on that, slow it down. Whoa, that's something else. Quint quad. And then back to CCT mode. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.